the Kelly American Challenge at Pocono International Raceway. The second half of our doubleheader today from Long Pond, Pennsylvania, in the Poconos in eastern Pennsylvania, in the Pocono Mountains. And the field is now moving out off the starting grid for the 45-minute race. On the front row on the pole, Vern Smith in a Camaro. Beside him, Gene Felton in a Camaro. With Vern Smith, who has won many races, Felton only won this year. Second row, Tommy Riggins and Craig Carter, both in Camaros. Row 3, Rob McFarland in a Mustang and Bobby Overby in a Camaro. Row 4, Clay Young in a Grand Am and Pete Harrison in a Skyhawk. The fifth row, Charles Pells in a Skylark and John Anderson in an Aspen. Row 6, Joe Laugette in a Nova and David Crabtree in a Mustang. The seventh row, Paul Gentilozzi in an Aspen and Paul Line in a Cutlass. Row 8, Cat Kaiser in a Spirit AMX and Butch Goff in a Malibu. Row 9, Irv Pierce in the Spirit, same car he ran before if they get it out there in time. And beside him is Nick Vicione, Houghton, and Fitzpatrick scheduled for row 10. And riding shotgun, the back of the field, Lynn St. James, who's had a fourth and a third in the last two races. She blew an engine in practice Saturday morning, and they could not get the new engine installed in time for qualifying. So Lynn has to start at the very back of the field in that Capri. A lovely, charming lady and a pretty hot shoe, let me tell you. And it should be interesting to watch Lynn St. James move up through the field. The Kelly American Challenge, these are stock American sedans. And as you saw on the starting grid, Camaros just have dominated the series so far. The Chevy products, Camaros and Novas. The man on the pole, Vern Smith, has won at Lime Rock, at Brainerd, at Sears Point, and at Portland so far this year. Gene Felton, who is beside him, has won only at Road America in Wisconsin. The field working their way through the high banking on the far end of the circuit. It's a 2.8-mile road course. As they come down, Bergie, your analysis of this race, what we can expect?
Well, we got a Camaro race into that first turn. Watch the guys back around the fourth row. They're down on the inside trying to jump the start. There's a lot of horsepower in the Camaros. They should lead into the first turn, and I think you're either going to see Vern Smith or Gene Felton take it.
Green flag. Green flag for the Kelly American Challenge. 45 minutes around this very tight 2.8-mile circuit. And Vern Smith jumps out in front, and Felton drops back to third immediately as the field works their way through the oval, the first turn, and into the second very tight turn, the one they call the hairpin.
What happened there, Bob, is Tommy Riggins was able to follow Vern Smith in his pole position right by Gene Felton. See, Tommy Riggins was down on the inside, and he's able to hold that inside position, go next to Gene Felton and force Gene to the outside, which put Gene back into third.
Three cars, a veritable train, working their way through the slowest section of the course. Smith, Riggins, and Felton, nose to tail, around the devil's elbow. And when they get up on the back straight, they are really going to be hauling the mail down that long straight. It's banked as they get up on there, swings to the right, and then the Long Pond Straight, which takes them down into the banking at the far end of the circuit. Vern Smith out in front. Those are all Camaros.
Those are Chevy Camaros. It's a pretty highly modified car, Bob. They changed the rules last year. There goes Gene Felton, moving back, showing Tommy Riggins, and by golly, I belong in second. That's where I'm going to be.
Felton's opinion is that he belongs in first all the time.
Right, that's for sure.
He just ran off of this series last year. This year he's had all kinds of mechanical problems that has kept him out of winner's circle every race but one. This is the next to the last race in the series, and Vern Smith is leading in the series, and he could clinch the season championship here at Pocono today. They've completed the first lap. 1 minute and 39 seconds. We'll get you the speed on that in just a moment. You can see these big, heavy cars really fighting their way around that oval first turn and driving into what is almost a W-shaped section of the course. Felton and Smith and Riggins, those three cars, 1, 2, 3, and Lynn St. James has already moved well up into the field, now running in 7th place, and she started last.
There's Rob McFarland has moved up into a 4th position. Rob is running pretty good. It looks like Bob Overby right behind him.
That's Lynn St. James, the 07 car. That's a Mercury Capri. She is a very talented racer and a very articulate spokesman for what she does. and for whatever she undertakes. She also has an automotive parts company that she owns and operates. The leader's going up onto the back straightaway section of the course. Felton taking a little lower line through than is Vern Smith. Felton closing down. These cars will draft down this long straight, Bergie.
Oh yeah, they'll draft. They'll try and get right up behind each other. There's Gene Felton. There's the effect of the draft. He's able to pull up, pull alongside,
wheel to wheel,
down inside,
and away he goes.
Now you're going to see Vern Smith draft on Gene Felton. Now as they come around by us, you're going to see him come down the start to finish straight. I wouldn't be surprised to see Vern Smith drop down to the inside of Gene Felton and try and hold the inside line into turn one. Let's see if he can do it.
It is a cool, breezy day in Pocono.
Ah, there's a racing move.
Vern Smith may be content just to ride along behind Felton for a while. Not taking it easy particularly, but there is no lap prize money at stake here. And he can save a little bit of the car by just following Felton around. Looks like he bobbled a bit there because Felton opened up a couple more car links on him.
Well, if Vern Smith can follow right behind Gene, he puts a lot of pressure on him. And believe me, sometimes it's easier to be running second, right on the tail of the leader. You put a lot of pressure on him. You force him to drive in a line maybe he doesn't want to.
Felton stretching it out there as they go through with the devil's elbow. That red Camaro is Riggins. There's Gene Felton. Gene Felton, the Georgian. He builds race cars. He has a parts company, and he also has a cosmetics operation. Gene doesn't look like the kind of guy who'd sell you face cream, does he?
That's for sure.
But he does. The white and purple Camaro out front.
Gene Felton is really at home in these big cars. When you watch him drive and when you're near him on the racetrack, he's totally at ease. And the bigger the car, the more noise it makes, the bigger his smile. He just loves these things.
Especially here at Pocono, because he spends so much of the time on the tri-oval. And he is well accustomed to oval racing as well as road racing. 1, 2, 3. Felton, Smith, Tommy Riggins running along in third place. Crossing the stripe. It is a 45-minute race. The number of laps they burn doesn't make any difference at all. Vern Smith now closing down a little bit, Felton, as they go through the oval turn, leaving the home straightaway, going into the infield section of the course. You can watch Felton's hands on the wheel, working it back and forth. Riggins is hanging in there well. Lynn St. James still standing in down, I believe, 8th place.
Looks like it's about 8th place, right.
What a beautiful woman. I feel like a sexist when I talk about Lynn St. James on a racetrack, but she's so darn pretty, I just can't help mentioning it.
Lynn has a great personality. Even the girls like her.
Car in trouble. Off the circuit, down at the big bank turn at the far end. We'll try to get his glasses on that. Oh, that car is still there from the Champion Challenge race. That is not from this field of cars. I beg your pardon, my mistake. Smoke coming out of the back end of Cat Kaiser's car from Akron, Ohio. That is a lot of smoke. And that's not tire smoke, Bergie.
No, that's not tire smoke, I don't believe, Bob.
And right behind her is Andy Falbo from Detroit. And if he doesn't get out of there, he's liable to get a face full of oil. Now they're on the back section of the course, and that's where she'll work it the hardest. So we'll wait and see if Cat Kaiser can keep going. Gene Felton, the leader.
Interesting situation here, Bob. These cars weigh a little bit over 4,000 pounds. They're coming down the straightaway, which you just saw, coming into turn number 1 at about 165, 170 miles an hour. Then they have to slow that car down to about 55. And the turn you see right here, that's only about a 20-mile-an-hour turn. So there's a tremendous wear factor on the brakes. These kind of cars have never run this course for any length of time. They've run in practice and in qualifying. There we go. There's
Cat Kaiser's coming into the pits, as well she should.
Look to me
wait
like
for a report from Mike Brockman on Cat Kaiser's problems. One of several women who are running in the Kelly American Challenge. And part of the goal of the series is to involve more women in motor racing as competitors. Lynn St. James, Kathy Root has run some races, Vicki Smith, and they're hoping to get more competitors. Kat Kaiser is staying in the car, but when the hood's up, maybe that's trouble.
Yeah, that's not too good.
Any theories on what it might be, Bergie?
Well, it's really hard to say. That thing was smoking pretty heavily. It was dark blue smoke, so it's not steam. It's an internal engine problem. I don't think we're going to see Kat go back out again.
Belton through the high bank section of the circuit. Track looks to be in good shape, and you can see how much quicker these front-running cars are than some of the back markers in the field. Smith is not letting Gene Belton get out of his grasp at all as they cross the stripe. The margin is about 1/10 of a second. Smith really putting the heat on Gene Belton now. Through the oval turn. Stressing those tires, something fierce, let me tell you. Belton, who is 45 years old, doesn't look it. I guess racing keeps you young. And Vern Smith, who is a very conservative, quiet guy, never says very much until he gets behind the wheel. Vern Smith is 39 years old. That's what they call the devil's elbow. And when you see what the cars do there, you can see why they call it that. Up onto the back portion of the tri-oval now. Smith hanging on to Gene Belton. We'll see now, as they go down here, who's got the most pure power, or are they evenly matched?
I think those two cars are pretty evenly matched, don't you, Bob? Nobody seems to be moving away from each other on the tri-oval on the straightaway. Very possibly Vern Smith has an advantage. When they get up in this high bank, Vern seems to close up the gap a little. His car might be working a little better. Gene can drive his right down to the white line and hold it down there. Vern can do the same thing.
That's Vern Smith. You can see horn rim glasses, just a quiet guy, driving a loud, fast car. Every man's dream.
Yeah, you can see Bob Vern is able to close it on the straightaway. He seems to be running a little faster. Looks like he can go down a little deeper into turn one. Looks like he has a little advantage on the high-speed portion of the turn, and maybe Gene has a little advantage on the infield.
We have 35 minutes to go in this 45-minute race as they go around the hairpin. And you can see that as they work this slow section of the course, Belton does seem to be able to get an advantage, to extend his margin just a little bit. But Vern Smith just throwing the back end around, trying to stay with Gene Belton. And Tommy Riggins still standing in third place. We'll be back to follow this battle at Pocono in just a moment. Belton is still out in front in the Kelly American Challenge at Pocono International Raceway at Long Pond, Pennsylvania. Fall and the International Motorsports Association have come to the Poconos and are putting on a great show for the crowd here today. That's Lynn St. James in the Capri, and Lynn has been falling back. Apparently, the engine that they put in yesterday when she had problems and blew the first one is not operating well. She has dropped back to 10th place. The battle continues between Gene Belton from Marietta, Georgia, and Vern Smith from York, Pennsylvania. Kind of a hometown boy. 7/10 of a second margin. And they are now back into the slow section of the course. And here again we'll see whether Vern Smith can stay with Belton. Closes up on him on the high-speed portions. Belton opens up in the low-speed portions. Belton describes some of these turns as you get to the turn, stop, turn the car, and start up again, which may be a bit of an overstatement, but some of those turns really are very slow, Bergie.
That's about it, especially for 4,000 pounds. Yeah, you sort of have to drive up, park it, turn right, and go.
Do these cars have power steering?
No, none of these cars are running power steering that I know of.
So that's really a wrestle job.
Yeah, The car is an interesting car. About 2 years ago, they made a change in this series, and they liberalized the rules, and they allowed cars like these Camaros to be built. And it brought in a lot of new people, because a real true racer won't race anything but a race car. Believe me, these are all race cars. They're not at all unlike the NASCAR stock cars that you see.
Very much like, and driven very much like. A lot of drafting, fender pounding, and again, you see Smith closes up very close now on Felton, right behind him, coming off that 17-degree banking at the far end of the circuit.
Aha, there we go. Now
Here
Vern
it comes.
is going to try and hold him off by dropping down the inside. If he can hold that position, he'll get by Gene, because Gene is forced to back off. He can't come to the inside and take a chance of a contact. That was a nice pass.
Nice move by Vern Smith. We have about 30 minutes remaining in the 45-minute race. Vern Smith back out in front. They're going around one of the slower cars. That appears to be Nick Vicione in a Hornet.
You know, Bob, there's an interesting thing that can happen from a driver's viewpoint that we're not aware of. I'm not saying that this did happen. However, sometimes if a driver can't get away from another driver and he's hounding him, he'll think, okay, I'll follow you for a while, and I'll put the pressure on you. You know, if you can get the other guy to make a mistake and spin, you can get a pretty easy win. Right now, both those guys are working hard, so maybe Gene thought, okay, Vern, I'll let you down and let you go by me, and we'll see what happens.
One of the problems you can get into, though, if you run too close behind that lead car with Smith in front, Felton in second, if you run right nose to tail with them for too long, you can overheat your engine because you don't get enough air in there.
That's right. Fortunately, on this racetrack, they get into the infield, so they get a chance to let the engine breathe.
That's Gene's wife, and there's Gene, back out in front, by a nose, by about a wheel.
By golly, that's good racing. That's really good racing.
Marvelous racing.
Vern's down below the white line. That shows that car handles pretty well. When you can drive him down there.
Oh, little wiggle there.
Now we've got a little slower traffic. I think they'll split this car.
We're coming up on Lynn St. James, I think it is. No, that's not Lynn. Check that. Handle that slower car with no particular problem. That is where Smith took over the lead 1 lap ago.
That was Paul Lean in the Oldsmobile Cutlass. Paul did what most drivers will do. He'll see the fast guys coming up behind him. He'll hold position. If he moves one way or the other, it creates a problem. They know they can go around him, but if he darts to one side or the other, that's the one thing they don't expect.
Well, when they were coming down that home straightaway, side by side, Lean probably didn't know where to go. The Camaros are coming. The Camaros are coming. Smith, about 5 car lengths on Gene Felton. Vern travels very light. He has, in some races, he has a crew of about 2. He may pick up 1 or 2 persons at whatever circuit they're at. And these guys help each other. A couple of races back, he cut a tire, had to come into the pits, and Craig Carter's crew helped him change the tires. They changed 3 of the 4. The one they didn't change 2 laps later went flat. But there is a considerable amount of back and forth helping of one another in this and almost every kind of racing. Here goes Felton again. Again, they're wheel to wheel. Oh, he took him with ease that time.
You can see the effect of drafting. You can get behind that car and it'll suck you right along. Gene is able to draft him, but after he goes by, he can't get away.
They're going to go at it like this for the whole 45 minutes, I suspect. So what a finish we are going to see. Felton's car running very, very strong. Now that's interesting.
Yep.
I didn't think that could be done side by side through that turn. I know it can't be done through the hairpin. And they're coming up on Paul Gentilossi in an Aspen. Should catch him here in this chute in the S's before the next turn. Maybe not. The 2 Camaros just going at it.
Paul moves over to the outside, lets the 2 guys go by on the inside. He doesn't want to mess up that race.
They can't draft on the slow section of the course. Drafting just isn't a factor. They're not going fast enough. Look at Smith bend the back end of that thing around, and here comes Felton again. Now Felton's closer to him coming off there than he had been before. This is just power. That wasn't a draft. That was just power getting off the turn. got the better bite, and here comes Smith. And there goes Felton.
You know, Bob, if this race stays like this, you're going to see two guys in the victory circle with grins from ear to ear, because this is what the guys come here for. This to them is a lot of fun. They're going fast. It's a little bit scary, but because they're race car drivers, they like this. This is great.
Just over 25 minutes remaining in this Kelly American Challenge at Pocono International Raceway. Little bumper tag. Here comes Smith. There goes Felton. Across start finish and into the first turn. They call that the oval turn at Pocono. Smith seems to be able to ride a much lower line through there, Bergie.
Well, I'm not so sure if there's a difference in handling or he's just trying to see where he can go. Remember, he's thinking ahead now about how Gene's car's handling. He's trying to size him up. Gene, when he's behind Vern, will try and size him up, because the race, if it stays like this, it gets down to the last 2 laps. Who can pass who? At that time, they forget about being friends, and they want to know where their car is better than the other car. So these two guys are looking to see which car has the advantage in which area.
Smith trailing Felton as they go up onto the back straight. We talked to the quiet man, Smith, from York, Pennsylvania, in the garage area earlier.
Vern, this race in Daytona, you got to hold on to get the championship. How does it look?
Well, we're running real well this weekend. We just qualified first. I think we got about 4 or 5 tenths on the second place car, who was my nemesis, Gene Felton. But I think I really don't see any reason why we shouldn't place well. Of course, with my position in the points, I have to keep that in mind and maybe drive a little more conservatively than I would in other situations. But I would like to be able to lock up the championship this weekend so that I can go to Daytona and just let it all hang out, as they say.
Well, if you finished top 3 or 4 here, you would, wouldn't you?
I guess mathematically I could finish as low as 5th or 6th and lock it up. It would depend on who was in front of me and who wasn't. But basically I need a top 5 finish here, and that should pretty well lock me in for the championship for this year.
You're driving a big car on a course which is very tight and narrow in some areas and kind of wide and fast in others. That's got to be a real challenge.
Not to to say bad things about the track, but the infield in this track is just the tightest, narrowest piece of race track I've ever been on, and it's difficult to get these big cars, ours, around it in single file, and any passing is just out of the question in there with any degree of safety. So what it forces you to do is that you follow the leader through the infield, and then everybody who's going to do any passing has to do it out there on the banking at about 150 miles an hour. So that's not exactly the way I would like to have to do all my passing, but that's the way it is here.
That is Vern Smith, and that's the leader, Gene Felton. Felton out in front of Vern Smith. Tommy Riggins is still running in 3rd position, but he has dropped out of the battle for 1st. And a car in trouble in the pits. Nick Vicione in the Hornet, the hood up. Phantom Racing and some kind of phantom or poltergeist got him. But Vicione is in the pits in a 45-minute race. That is really bad. And here comes Vern Smith again. Across the stripe, side by side into the oval turn. Sounds like something to drink. And Smith takes back 1st place. Vern Smith out in front of Felton again. These guys are ramping around like a couple of puppies.
Well, as Vern said a little bit earlier, if you can lead through turn 1 onto the infield, you're probably going to hold that lead all the way through the infield onto the oval. The trick is when you get on the oval, you've got to get enough lead so you can't allow the other guy to draft and then pass back on the oval.
And Felton seems to get off the last turn onto the tri-oval section with a little bit more bite than Vern Smith does. Felton seems to come off there quicker as he tucks his front end underneath the little spoiler in the back of Vern Smith's Camaro, and they are now out of the tri-oval. A little wiggle, a little fan dance there by Gene Felton. That cost him maybe a tenth. And now they go onto the bank portion. That's about 15-degree banking there. Smith in front, Felton, Tommy Riggins, Bob Overby, and Craig Carter. We'll be back at Pocono shortly. The battle continues at Pocono International Raceway between Vern Smith and Gene Felton. This time across the line, it is Felton. And we are now just over halfway through the 45-minute race. Vern Smith and Felton have taken turns leading since the race began. There have been no incidents in the race. A good, safe, careful, and fast drive by this field of American sedans. The Kelly American Challenge, a series which is growing both in its competitive aspects, its acceptance by the motor racing community, and I guarantee you by the fans. This is what racing is all about. Going at it wheel to wheel, good, clean, hard racing. Felton in front. Smith with a slightly lower entrance into that turn. Felton extends it because Smith apparently got a little too low in the turn. If you get down in the gray area, the black section of the surface is where you want to be. That's where the rubber is, that's where the bite is. You get out of there, you get up what they call the gray, the marbles. There can be little bits of rubber and gravel up there, and you lose the bite considerably. That is the third place car, Tommy Riggins. Riggins, who hung in on that battle for first place for a considerable time and is not that far out of it yet. About a second and a half, 2 seconds behind the second place car of Vern Smith. Tommy Riggins from Jacksonville, Florida.
Yeah, Tommy Riggins is not fading. He's holding a very strong third. He hasn't dropped back at all. Because of the camera angle, we haven't seen a lot of Tommy, but here up in the viewing booth, we've been noticing that Tommy is very much in the hunt. If either one of those cars spun in the front, he would be by him. He's that close. You can see him back there in the camera.
Tommy's in fourth place in the series standings, and a good finish here would move him probably into third place. Wheel to wheel, all day long.
Vern Smith says it's my turn, Gene.
Now, I'll tell you something, folks. Not only does that take a lot of brave, it takes a lot of brains to know what your car can do and where it can do it. Very wide, very wide. And there's Riggins hanging in. This is an excellent race.
You mentioned something just a few minutes ago, Bob, that I'd like to elaborate on. Whenever two cars are driving that close at these speeds, you have to really know the guy you're racing against. Both these guys have raced against each other, and you have to have respect for the other driver. You would not do this with an individual you didn't know or somebody maybe that had just started racing. You just get to know the other driver's moves, and you know he's not going to do anything stupid that's going to cause you a problem or him a problem.
Motor racing's versions of who do you trust? This is a remarkable race. If you were with us when we brought you the Kelly American Challenge from Lime Rock, that's Tommy Riggins, the third place runner, you may recall that we had just an incredible finish. Vern Smith won it over Jake Carter by about a bumper length. Smith had to come into the pits, change a tire, got back out, and just managed to nip Carter at the wire. For reasons we'll explain a little later on. Here we go again, side by side. And one of these guys will come away with a barrel of money. Felton and Vern Smith across the stripe one more time. We have about 17 minutes remaining in the race. Felton in the purple and white Camaro. And Smith's all white. Both of these guys do almost all of their own work in preparing the cars, and obviously they do all their own work at racing them in. Quite a job at that. A beautiful setting for a motor race on a beautiful day. It's breezy, but the breeze will not affect these cars. They're so heavy they just stick to the track. Part of the natural beauty of Pocono, Pennsylvania. Now Felton's managed to open up a bit here.
Yeah, something's happened in there.
I think Smith let the back end get away from him a little bit. In the S's, coming off the S's portion. So that Felton now has the biggest lead anybody has had in this race. It is 1.2 seconds as they go down that back straightaway, the Long Pond Straight. The mailing address here is Long Pond. As a matter of fact, speaking of mail, we'd love to hear from you. Pocono would love to hear from you. Let them know that you're pleased that we are able to bring this competition to you on ESPN.
Looks like Bob Overby.
It's Bob Overby. Bobby with a strong run today. Round face, smiling guy, happy man, doing what he loves to do the most. As the battle for first continues, and again, Smith has closed down on him. Smith very obviously has power, even when he's not drafting, to move in on Felton.
The only thing is, though, Bobby, he's back a little ways here. This is the furthest he's been back in about 5 or 6 laps. Now, I noticed he did not lose any distance on the tri-oval, but he lost a fair amount of distance on the infield that last lap.
I talked to Vern at the Kelly get-together last night and asked him if this circuit was going to be hard on tires. And he said he thought it would. He said he thought it was possible that he might have to come in for tires. So we may see some high-speed pit stops before this is over. Ordinarily you wouldn't, but it is kind of a rough surface. It is a cool day, however, which will reduce the tire wear some. You would hate to see a problem like that be a factor in the outcome of the race. Now, let's see, Lynn St. James running in 10th place in that Mercury Capri. That engine has held up longer than she thought it would.
There was a good indication. Yes, that was a good indication of the difference in engine size and horsepower. Gene Felton with his big 400 cubic inch engine going by Lynn St. James with a lot smaller engine.
Streaking by her. Just streaking by her. I think she may be perhaps not using up all of that car just so that she can finish the race and collect some points. But right now, if she stays where she is in 10th place, she'll get only 1 point. Felton and Smith. With about 14 minutes to go in the race. Camaro versus Camaro versus Camaro. Lynn St. James has come into the pits. St. James pits. They are not putting the hood up yet. Looks like they're checking tires. So it could be that she feels the handling is not what it should be, and maybe it's tires. That's the way they stand at Pocono International Raceway. We will continue with the Kelly American Challenge in a moment. Changing the left rear tire on Lynn St. James' car, and she is now going to drop out of the top 10. Tough day for the lovely lady from Florida.
Yeah, Lynn St. James wants to get back in the race and see if she can salvage a few points. She's running 3rd in the series right now, and she doesn't want to give up any points.
She drives with her glasses on, and off she goes. We'll see if this helps the handling of the car at all, if she can go any quicker. Gene Felton is out in front. And in 2nd place is Vern Smith, and Tommy Riggins is closing in there. You see Riggins, just that yellow car, just swooping into the high bank at the east end. This is Gene Felton, who won everything last year. I mean everything. He won every pole but one. He won every race. Now Pete Harrison is big. Smith gets around him, so Vern Smith still trying to set his sights on Gene Felton. And closing up, and Riggins is staying with that battle as well as they go around the hairpin. That's Riggins' car, the yellow and red car, running in 3rd place. What a drive by Tommy Riggins. Tommy
Riggins has really come back into the hunt now. He might have been pacing himself, but you can see he's obviously very competitive. I think
Felton with as comfortable a margin, and believe me, that is not a comfortable margin, as you have ever seen. About 12 and a half minutes to go. Maybe the longest 12 minutes in a long time for Gene Felton, and for Vern Smith, and for Tommy Riggins. As they go at it, and Riggins, as you pointed out earlier, is not out of this thing by any stretch of the imagination.
To give you an idea how close this race is, we're almost 3/4 of the way over, and this is the biggest lead that Gene Felton has, and it's under 2 seconds.
Of all the Kelly races that we have seen, this is far and away the most competitive throughout the entire race. It takes a worried mind to be a pit worker, and a lot of cross fingers. You can see how those cars just almost sit down on that banking as the Chevy Camaros roar across start-finish. That is a particularly bouncy section of the circuit. They just went over the entrance to the first turn, the oval turn. It's almost like going off a cliff when you're in the car.
You notice, Bob, coming through turn 1, you can observe Gene Felton's car, and then watch Vern Smith's car. Vern Smith has a certain amount of oversteer in that car. I'm not sure if he's dialed that in or if he's having a problem with the rear tires overheating.
It has been, the back end has been working against him almost several times.
And the one thing you can't afford to do, you can't slide these cars too much. They weigh a whole lot, and if you do, you start getting excessive tire temperatures, and if you blister one of these tires, that's the end of your race. So you can still keep racing, but you're just non-competitive.
They are on racing slicks. These are not street tires. As the champion racer did earlier for you, those were street tires. These are not. These are racing tires. And again, you want to stay out of that gray area because as the race goes on, more gravel and little bits of tire wear that roll up into little balls, they call them marbles. You get out there and you can lose control of the car or cut a tire. Felton has led for a while now. This is the longest stretch of time that anybody has led in this race. Vern Smith has his work cut out for him. And it looks like Overby may have moved into, no, I beg your pardon, that's a lap car. That is a lap car. There's Smith. And Overby still, or Riggins rather, still standing in third place. Tommy Riggins still in third. Felton coming up on a slower car as he goes into one, and going around a slower car as he goes into one. Car handles beautifully, and he works it beautifully. Felton kind of stiff arms the steering wheel, sits well back, with arms extended. And you can see as he comes around the turn, the hands working the wheel there. Now, Vern Smith is caught behind a slower car.
That's the breaks of racing, Bob. Those things happen sometimes. It can happen to you or happen to your competitor. There's not a darn thing you can do about it.
Smith, now he's managed to get around that car, but Gene Felton has picked up space and time on the circuit with less than 9 minutes to go. 9 minutes can be a long time or a short time. It depends on what you're doing. You see Felton well out onto the back straight as Vern Smith just gets on it. We'll get a gap for you as they go down that back straightaway. Felton with a pretty sizable lead now, more than 3 seconds over Vern Smith. That's Smith in second place. Vern Smith looking for a break in the Kelly American Challenge at Pocono International Raceway. I'm Bob Steinbrink. We'll be back for the finish in a moment. Pocono International Raceway, Gene Felton still with the lead. Sports Center's sports news team works round the clock to bring you television's most comprehensive sports news program. 5 times a day, Sports Center proves itself the #1 source for scores, highlights, features, and commentary on the latest events in the world of sports. With updates throughout the day and a full hour of live sports news 7 evenings a week, Sports Center gives you up-to-the-minute sports information. Sports Center is an exclusive feature of your total sports network, ESPN. Gene Felton out in front, and we have less than 7 minutes to go. The margin 2.5 seconds. Vern Smith running out of time. Felton threatening to run away and collect his second victory of the year. He won at Road America. That gives you an idea of the space that Smith has to pick up.
I think what's happened, Bob, is that when Vern's car is in the infield, you see a fair amount of oversteer in that car. And I believe he's having to back off a little bit because he's got a tire overheating problem. I believe that right now he's thinking, I want to salvage his second place, take the points, and almost for sure wrap up the championship.
That would wrap up the championship. Give him 15 points, it'd be 119. With only one race remaining, Craig Carter, who is currently in 5th place here, could not possibly catch him. And Vern said, when I talked to him in the garage area yesterday, if it came down to it, he might drive a little more conservatively to make sure he got that good finish to lock up the Kelly American Points Championship. And that may be what's going through his mind right now. Tommy Riggins has dropped out of the battle for first, second, and third place. He is coasting into the pits as Gene Felton. There's Riggins.
Tommy Riggins,
Jacksonville, Florida.
Geez, that's a shame. After a good drive like that, he's coming into the pits. He's coming in very, very slow, so we'll have to see where the crew goes. If they open up the hood, we know what that is. If they run to the back of the car, you might have a tire, but I don't see the car in a unusual attitude, so I don't think you have a tire situation.
And I don't see any sign of smoke. He may have shut it off, but we'll see what happens when he gets down to his pit crew. Or perhaps he'll just take it right back to the garage. That's what he's doing.
Taking it back to the garage. That's
and we got a spin up on the entrance to the long back straight. Try to get a number on that car for you. I believe it is Paul Gentilozzi in the Aspen that is spun back there. That is a not too dangerous a place as they workers. Good job by the course workers here at Pocono. Yeah, that is Gentilozzi, and they have rolled the car off the circuit. That's one of the slowest places on the circuit, and the cars have plenty of opportunity to see the problem there and to see the yellow flag. Less than 5 minutes remaining as Vern Smith tries to catch Gene Felton as they hurtle down that back straightaway. Felton crossing the stripe, and Vern Smith, and he is now 2.4 seconds behind. Into the pits, Charles Pelz. Pelz, who stood in 7th place in the Kelly American Challenge standings. In and right back out again. Trying to hold on to a position and collect some precious points because there is money at stake. There's your leader, our leader, Gene Felton, the 96 Camaro. That car looks just as smooth now as it did at the start of the race, Bergie.
Yeah, it's really handling well, and Vern Smith has definitely slowed down a little bit. Vern Smith now just wants to finish and hold on to 2nd place. Incidentally, Vern Smith knows that Tommy Riggins is out of the race. He would have been aware of that because Tommy has disappeared from his rearview mirror. So Vern is just going to hold on for 2nd, wrap up the championship, be happy at that.
Be overjoyed at that, I would think. So we're going to have, it appears, 2 winners here today. As Smith,
you know, Vern Smith seems to be going unusually slow right in that area.
I was just going to say, he got up in that back straight and it took him a while to get up to speed. Could it be perhaps a gear problem?
Yeah, that's very possible. He may have lost one of his low gears. I don't know if he goes onto that bank in 2nd or 1st, but he sure did go up on it slow that time.
The pressure is off this man considerably now, Gene Felton, except Gene Felton, the last race, I believe it was at Road Atlanta, was running very, very strongly. Looked like he had, I think it was 2nd place locked up, and on the last lap, the fuel pump failed, and he did not finish the race. So you know what's got to be going through Gene Felton's mind with 2.5 minutes to go. We got Felton working his way into the S's and a car smoking up ahead of him, it looks like. So Felton's got to play it pretty cautious here. Drove a very heady, brave race, and he and Vern Smith went at it like something you love to see. I can't see enough of that kind of racing. He's all by himself now in 1st place. Vern Smith is not any kind of a threat in 2nd place, but nobody is a particular threat to Vern Smith. Now running in 3rd place now is Craig Carter, who is in 2nd in the season standings. So Carter could pick up 12 points, but if Vern Smith gets 15 for 2nd place, he will have put Craig Carter away for the season and clinched the championship. Gene Felton, the defending season champion, now is in 5th place, and he could move up several places with a win here. Down the Long Pond straightaway. Put to the floor, Felton.
Notice how soft he's got that car sprung. It moves around quite a bit. If you notice Vern Smith, when his car comes around in that attitude, it is not doing any nearly as much movement.
And as he goes into turn one, watch the bounce. Boom,
There you can see
right
it.
there. The car's almost bottom there. But that is part of road racing.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to be like a mirror. And it's not.
Well, everybody's racing on the same track. Everybody has the same problems.
Less than a minute to go now, so Felton should be on his last lap.
Do you see that little wave?
Yep.
He was waving that passing car. That guy moved off his line. That was Nicholas
Piccioni. Piccioni got out of the way.
The drivers oftentimes do that. If they have a chance, they'll thank him. If they do it with an open hand, they're thanking him. If they do it with a closed hand or the universal signal, they're telling him, I wish you'd move over a little bit quicker.
They're suggesting what may be your IQ if it's that signal. Onto the Long Pond Tri-Oval at Pocono, Gene Felton from Marietta, Georgia. 45 years old, last May 11th, on his way to a win. We are past 45 minutes now, so Gene should get the checkered flag this time. Coming into that 17-degree banking. Listening for things. Wondering if it's going to hold together for that final half-mile roll down to the start-finish line.
Right about now, you hear all kinds of gremlins in the car. It seems like everything starts to break, and you hear noises that you never heard before.
Checkered flag is out and waving for Gene Felton of Marietta, Georgia. Felton wins the Kelly American Challenge at Pocono International Raceway. And we wait for Vern Smith running in second place. By finishing second, Smith will clinch the season championship. Felton on his cool-down lap.
The Kelly American Challenge Championships goes to Vern Smith. Very good race. Gene Felton drove a heck of a race. I think that Gene probably had his car set up maybe a little bit better than Vern to go the whole distance, but then again, Vern realized that all he had to do is have a good finish, and he wrapped up the championship, so I'd say that you have two guys that are really happy.
And Gene Felton has had so many problems. This is his second win. He won at Road America, or rather Road Atlanta, the last race. No, Tommy Riggins won the last race, and Felton won at Road America. But only his second win, he finished second in a race at Sears Point. So it's been a long year for the guy who just literally was the name of this series for the first 4 years of its existence. An impressive job of preparation and impressive performance on the racing circuit by Gene Felton.
There's a shot of Craig Carter, third place, and I know that Bob Overby slid into fourth place.
So Carter picks up 12 points for second place, and that will move him to 89 points. Vern Smith gets 16 points, 1 point for the pole, and 15 for second place. So he's got 120 points. That is a 31-point lead with only one race remaining, and the most points that Carter could get would be 21. So Vern Smith has definitely clinched the Kelly American Challenge Championship. And Tommy Riggins finished fourth.
I believe Tommy Riggins was fourth. Let me see if I can get a rundown of that.
Okay,
no,
Gene
I
Felton
think it was Overby.
Overby finished fourth.
Yeah, Overby was fourth.
Okay, so Bob Overby will pick up 10 points
And
for his finish.
I believe that Clay Young brought his Pontiac Grand Am home for fifth.
So Clay picks up 8 points. So Vern Smith has clinched first place, but there could be quite a battle for second place in the season standings. As Felton rolls down to victory circle, he was going to go back to the garage. Gene thinking, well, I did my job today. What the heck?
Great story on Gene Felton. His first IMSA win, 1973, in the Starlight race at Daytona Speedway. He brought out an old Pontiac, all covered with grease and dirt, put the thing on the pole. Other road racers like Peter Gregg said, that's impossible for Gene Felton to be on the pole. Your timing was all wrong. He took off, went into the turn first, the first turn, and led the whole race. People were going, who the heck is Gene Felton? Well, Gene Felton had come out of NASCAR racing, and he was good, and he's been consistently good. A hard driver, fun guy to race with, always smiling.
He started out the year in a Nova with a six-cylinder engine, figuring that the weight advantage would work, and it just didn't. And finally, he gave up and went back to the Camaro and the bigger engine.
There's that smile.
How sweet it is. He is truly a good old boy. Very unassuming. That's Connie Goodenough giving him a kiss. Connie is the supervisor of this series for Kelly Services.
We might even get a chance to see Gene's racing shoes. He drives in leather cowboy boots.
Gene Felton on the victory stand. He'll be joined there by Vern Smith, who finished second. That was a good race. That augurs very well for the series in the years to come, I think, Bergie.
Yeah, it shows that you can build a race car, by golly, that'll handle and go fast and have some darn good racing. You're going to see a lot of guys building cars for the Kelly American Challenge. There's pretty good prize money in it, and there's good racing, and what more can you ask?
And these Camaros with all that power on this particular circuit with so many long straightaways dominated the smaller cars in the series. The Mustang of Rob McFarlane, the Malibu, the Capri of Lynn St. James, but the Kelly Services people who are supervising the series, putting it together, are trying to involve more American cars and some smaller cars in the series, giving them a weight advantage so that there'll be more and more competition next season. You can be sure of it. Now that's the way to go racing, Bergie.
Yeah, there's all kinds of beautiful facilities in this area.
That's not one of the more posh resorts.
Oh, the price is right. That, incidentally, does not refer to the Sleep Cheap t-shirt we saw earlier. That's Red Roof Inn, owned by Jim Truman, who's a very avid racer. We see Jim Truman run the series quite often.
It is a beautiful setting as Craig Carter collects his third place money, and Vern Smith, that's Vern on the left in the brown racing suit. Gene Felton on the uppermost position on the victor's stand with the medal around him and holding the silver bowl, which he may fill with his favorite beverage a little later on this afternoon and take a sip or two.
There's a good shot of the super speedway. The track is around on the white wall that you see in the furthest distance. There is a little track in the infield right behind the garages. That has nothing to do with the main racetrack.
Gene Felton, 45, wins the Kelly American Challenge at Pocono International Raceway at Long Pond, Pennsylvania, in one of the most competitive, hardest fought races in the 10-race series with one to go. We'll be back at Pocono in just a moment. They bring in the less fortunate back into the garage area as the crowd soaks up the sun at Pocono International Raceway. Gene Felton celebrates the win. Let's go to Mike Brockman down in the winner's circle.
Gene Felton down here in the winner's circle. Gene, you look like you had a lot of fun out there.
Mike, it's the toughest 45-minute race I've ever been in. It's a super racetrack. We have the big track to run on. We have the infield to run on, and it's just a tremendously challenging race course. Of course, when you got 8 or 10 of these wild Indians behind you, chasing you, you know you've got to go.
You and Vern had an incredible race. Looked like you made up for some bad times earlier in the year.
I think once again have gotten rid of some of the bad luck. I just hope it continues to last. Vern was pushing me really hard. We went just full bore the whole day. I don't think either one of us ever lifted anywhere we didn't really have to. We went into the banking down there just flat to the floor and held it all day long, it seemed like.
Gene, it was an incredible race. Terrific.
Well, we certainly enjoyed it.
Okay, our congratulations to Gene Felton with a charming smile and a very heavy right foot. Felton wins it. Vern Smith clinches the Kelly American Challenge Series Championship. And Mike Brockman's with Vern Smith down in winner's circle, victory lane.
Vern, you won the championship and you had a heck of a race, didn't you?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Gene and I had a real good race in California earlier in the year, and I managed to win that one, but he won this one today. But they were both good races. We were both driving hard. I was happy with the results. I was having the double clutch all my shifts at the end, which is why he got a good lead, but I'm not sure that I would have been able to beat him anyhow. He was so darn close.
Well, it was a terrific race, the kind of fans like to see. It was a great show, and we're real happy you won a championship.
Thanks a lot.
Good.
Thank you, Michael. Our congratulations to Vern Smith, the Kelly American Challenge 1981 champion, even though there's one race to go. And even though he's the champion, they'll go at it just as hard in the final race of the season. Here are the final standings. In first place, Gene Felton from Marietta, Georgia. In the second place, Vern Smith from York, Pennsylvania. Third place was Craig Carter from Marion, Indiana. Fourth place, Bob Overby. And in fifth place, Rob McFarland in the Mustang. And that bodes well for the Mustang next year. And Lynn St. James has already proved that her little Capri can be very competitive. So we should see a marvelous Kelly American Challenge Series next year. They are going to expand it, we are told, to 10 races. Get a little sun in the Poconos. That's the way to live. Bergie, this was really one of the better races of the year, I thought.
Yeah, this is one of the best races going. We knew that the Camaros had a big advantage to run in the super speedway part of the racetrack, and Gene Felton and Vern Smith measured each other throughout the whole race. You heard the interview with Vern Smith afterwards. He had a clutch problem, had a double clutch near the end of the race. So he dropped back a little bit, and he was very happy to take the second place and wrap up the championship. Craig Carter, who we didn't see a whole lot of today, ran a very strong third. He and Bob Overby had a very strong race halfway through the race and then settled into the third and fourth position, and Rob McFarland brought the small engine Mustang home into fifth place. If they can run a Mustang and run fifth at this track, it gives you an idea what they'll do when they get into the short, tight tracks and they get a little more development time in that car. They'll be very strong.
An impressive job of preparation, I think, Bergie. These big, heavy Camaros, 4,000-pound cars, handling that tight road section so well.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into suspension setup. What they do before they get to the race, all the practice and qualifying, their big concern is tire temperatures. They'll drive hard and see how hot the tires get and change the temperatures and change the settings and do everything they can to keep those temperatures static. They don't want to get that tire up to 260 degrees and have a problem.
It's been down below 32 degrees, as you can tell by the trees that have changed colors already here in the Poconos. Lovely resort area in eastern Pennsylvania. We'll give you a final wrap-up on quite a day of motor racing at Pocono when we return. That's the story of the Kelly American Challenge at Pocono International Raceway. We've had two winners today, Bergie. Gene Felton wins the race and Vern Smith wins the championship, and you've got to be very happy for both guys.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to see Gene Felton get back on the winning track. You know, he dominated this series last year, and we've watched him in some of the previous races, and for Gene Felton, those early races were real throwaways. It just, everything went wrong, but he sure had it together today.
Nobody ever questioned his driving talent. It was always mechanical trouble that bit Gene Felton, and he apparently has gotten rid of the gremlins. Felton wins it. Vern Smith finished second in a very, very good race earlier. We brought you the Champion Spark Plug Challenge. Jim Downing won that and moved into first place in the series standings, and that championship will not be decided until the final race of the year, as the man who was in the lead in the series standings, Roger Mandeville, got bumped in turn one 13 minutes into the race and was knocked out of the race. Downing won the champion race. Cal Choquette, his best finish ever in the champion series, finished second, and Irv Pierce, both of them driving Spirits. Pierce finished third. That's the best finish ever in the champion series for the driver from Southern California. Mike Brockman. It was pretty quiet down in the pits, which is a good sign in terms of the preparation of the cars and the way these guys drove them.
These races that's really true. These races are only 45 minutes long, and if we have much pit action, then it pretty much takes them out of the lead. Glad to see they weren't in here, and it ran an incredible race. It was real exciting from my point of view, and just happy they didn't have to spend a lot of time in the pits.
Michael, the track seemed to stay in very good condition, too.
Yeah, the drivers I've spoken with since the race said that the track was very good, and they had no problems at all. It's just narrow in the infield and very fast on the banking, and they like that.
Mike Brockman knows all about that, so does Bergie, my buddy up here. Both of these guys are race drivers. As for me, the only racing I do is on the Hollywood Freeway, which is probably the most dangerous kind of all. We'd like to thank the folks at Pocono International Raceway, Dr. Mattioli and his crew. They did a marvelous job making it easy for us. Also, our thanks to a tremendous crew. Great camera work. Everybody just did a sensational job. The official outfitter to Cinevid Productions is Janssen, America's favorite supplier of swimwear, sportswear, and sweaters for more than 70 years. Nobody knows bodies better than Janssen. That's the story from Pocono International Raceway. We sure hope you enjoyed it. Drop us a line. We'd like to hear from you. This is the way the Kelly race came out, with Felton in first, Vern Smith second, Craig Carter third, Overby was fourth, and Rob McFarland finished fifth. A beautiful day for racing, and beautiful racing it was. We thank you for being with us. We'll see you again real soon. This has been a presentation of Cinevid International. With an ESPN presentation. ESPN, the Total Sports Network. I'm Bob Steinbrink. Good afternoon.